We made it to Turkey! Yay! Come with us to the magnificent ruins of the ancient city of Ephesus, a shocking experience at a carpet store, and the bliss of the Viking Star, all coming up. Hello, I'm Jeffrey Gard with The Whole Traveler, and in this episode, the Viking Star burrs into Kusadasi, Turkey. But first, if you're new, this is part of a video series, My First Viking Cruise, where I chronicle my adventures on the Viking Star and the cruise, Ancient Mediterranean Treasures. I also include our 3-day pre-extension in Athens and our 3-day post-extension in Istanbul. Check out all the videos on my playlist and check out my website articles where I share recommendations for each day. And you can also download PDFs of the shore excursions and the Viking dailies on my website. So the mornings at this point in the Viking Star are all kind of rinse and repeat. We have a set system where we have breakfast, room service delivered to our cabin at about 5:30 in the morning, where we're able to eat and watch the lecture in kind of a leisurely pace while we get ourselves ready. It's really, really nice. One of my favorite parts of the Viking Star experience was berthing into the port every morning. I absolutely love having the aft cabin. It's truly, you get this kind of really beautiful experience as the ship berths into the port. And with Kusadasi, it was no exception. While it didn't have like the magic that Rhodes had, it had its own intrigue. I really appreciated the hill with all the houses on the hill and the city signage and the golden statue, which is of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the founding father of modern Turkey. And then of course there's that little mysterious island with the fort, which I loved. All of it kind of had a really beautiful morning sunrise or tones of pink against calm waters. It was a wonderful welcome from Kusadasi, and one of the great surprises from disembarkation was a welcome dance provided by the locals. I live for these experiences. I only wish I'd gotten there a little bit earlier so I could have kind of just sat and recorded the whole thing, but we had to scoot because we had an early morning into Ephesus so that we had to jump onto the shuttle bus and get going. I don't like being one of those people that make everybody else wait. We were on the Viking excursion that's free with the package, TRK-US-03, Ancient Ephesus. Started at 8:30 in the morning, and it took about 30 minutes to get to Ephesus. Once on board, we discovered that our tour guide, who was a local history teacher, spoke in fluent, flawless American English. He shared that his wife was Texan, and honestly, that elevated the entire experience as he was able to articulate and share with us things about Turkey and Ephesus in terms and in context that most Americans can easily understand. And I have come to understand through this experience how much dialect matters. I was so grateful that he was such an easy speaker to understand. You know, all of the tour guides on the Viking excursions, they're local to their region. And of course, they all speak fluent English, but often they speak with heavy accents, and they almost always speak with a British vernacular. And that can sometimes produce a combination of things that are difficult to understand. Like they use maybe turns of phrases that you're just kind of like, what was that? And you don't really have time to ask them questions because the tours are on really tight timelines and they move fast, and you know, they simply won't be able to answer your questions, especially when you need clarification because you didn't understand something. But in this case, we were really grateful because it was so easy to understand everything he said. Ephesus is one of those tours where you definitely want to understand your tour guide because there's so much to see, learn, and experience, and I was so grateful for that, and he was amazing. But before we got to Ephesus, I have to say a little bit about the drive there. It was 30 minutes, and we went through some of the most scenic, most beautiful vistas that we have experienced on the trip so far. We went through, twisting through hills and, You could see the Mediterranean as a backdrop. It was absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous countryside. Now, one of the things that I'm going to definitely recommend that you definitely do is sign up for the first excursion out to Ephesus, which happens to be around 8:30 in the morning. You will be one of the first people at the actual site. And that's really important because there's a lot to see. There's a lot of photo moments to be had, and you kind of get the pick of the litter. You can actually be the first people that get some of the best photos, because when we were there, we were the first people there. We were able to kind of soak it up, and then the groups started pouring in. And once the groups pour in, they kind of just flood the area, making it really hard to get those magical photo moments. So that's just a little recommendation. Sign up for the very first excursion out to ancient Ephesus. Now, one of the things I love about Ephesus is that it is a long ruin of city. You get to go through like the main thoroughfare, like the Broadway of this ancient city, and there is plenty to see. It's not like Gnosis Palace. It's not like even the Parthenon. There's so much significant stuff to see that you're going to spend a couple of hours there really poring over buildings of so many different kinds, lots of architectural wonders. You're going to really enjoy it. You don't have to imagine, because there's quite a bit there that is literal that you can see, including the Library of Celsus. The facade is still there, and it will visually blow your mind. It's wild and wonderful when you consider that this library was built over 2,000 years ago. They didn't have books back then. They used scrolls. That's how old that building is that's still standing, that facade, and it's incredible. So if you are a lover of all things Roman Empire, Ephesus is going to be something that you will absolutely just be gobsmacked for. If you appreciate Christian history, Ephesus also is significant in that way. For those Christian viewers of mine, Paul the Apostle walked the steps along Curate Street, the same street you're walking through, to go and see all of these ruins. And that is kind of something special, I like to think. And of course, the Gospel of John is believed to have been written in Ephesus as well, which also makes it a magical place. And of course, Mary's final home is also nearby. It's not part of the ruins of Ephesus. It's a little ways away from the actual ruin site, which is something that you have to make a separate excursion to go and see from ancient Ephesus, which doesn't include that. But that's also, of course, a incredible thing. One of the most notable sites beyond the Library of Celsus is the Temple of Hadrian, which I find to be remarkable for one very specific thing. I want you to look closer into the back part beyond the arch. Archaeologists, I can't even say that word, archaeologists claim that is a Medusa, but it actually looks more like Melusine, the mythical mermaid siren-like creature that the Starbucks logo is modeled after. So you decide, you tell me, does this look more like Melusine with a splitting tail or Medusa? I'm erring towards Melusine. Can you see the similarity with the Starbucks logo? It's kind of wild, right? I stopped dead in my tracks when I saw it. One of the things that you also want to be aware of about the tour is that the walking areas, there's some areas that are planks of wood, but there's a lot of areas that are stone, like polished marble. It is extremely slippery. So wearing the right shoes with grip is one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. We actually had someone on our tour slip and fall. So if you have mobility issues and you're accustomed to using a cane, you definitely want to have that cane, but you definitely want to have shoes that have a good grip, because some of those marble stoneways were really slippery. So just, be aware of that. And of course, I'm going to talk about the cats. The cats of Turkey are just an entirely different breed of cat. They have like cat societies, and you could definitely see these cat societies and hierarchies and these relationships in the cats at Ephesus. They were just all kind of looking at each other, knowing they were friendly, very friendly to humans, but they all just kind of looked tired, like they had their own cat dramas. They were all like eyeing each other. Some were giving each other dirty looks. Others were rubbing up on each other. And there was like a whole cat soap opera happening behind the scenes. But the cats were very friendly towards humans. There's also a lot of, I think, like homeless dogs that were roaming in the area too. So some of the cats kind of made themselves a little scarce when the dogs were around. But it's overall, you know, big paws up for cat lovers. After the tour, we had some brief time to use the restrooms, which are at the end of the tour, right by the souvenir stands. And there's tons of souvenir stands, so you can knock your heart out if you're looking for tchotchkes. One of the things that you will absolutely notice about Turkey upon arrival is that it's not as cheap as you might think. Tourist Turkey is a concept that means that if you're considered an outsider in Turkey, you're going to pay the outsider price, which is ka-ching, ka-ching, the highest tier. So if a souvenir that costs a Turk like €1, it's going to cost you, the tourist, €5. Turkey's currency has crashed, but the locals are so razor sharp and have become really adept at using tourists to absorb the fallout from their currency collapse and the later inflation by offering tourist price tags to almost everything. And this was one of the things in Turkey we ever really rarely saw, were actually price tags on anything. You had to ask people, what is the price of this? And often when you ask them, they're going to quote you that outlandish price tag to see if it sticks. And that's the thing where I feel like there's a huge discrepancy between Turkey and Americans, is that in Turkey, Turks expect you to haggle and negotiate. This is such a deeply ingrained thing in Turkish culture that it's practically an art form. For Americans like me, I hate to haggle. You know, so it means I'm gonna have to pay the top tier prices for things. So if you're like me, you'll kind of feel like you're shopping in Italy or France, you know, in terms of price wise. So don't expect bargains unless you're really willing to haggle. And I wasn't. Funny story, while the bus was filled with almost everyone from the excursion back on, an elderly man with a voice that could only be created from smoking 10,000 cigarettes a day began to speak at the bus entrance. He had this really gravelly voice. He's like, I am delicious, and this is my Turkish delight. It is delicious too, and I give you good bargain. I'm not sure if he intended for his announcement to sound lewd, but several older women gasped, and of course others like myself laughed. It was funny. I am delicious. His first prize for the Turkish delight was crazy. And then he began to throw in 3 boxes for original quote, and of course I bought. I mean, how could I not buy from a man who calls himself delicious? So after we toured Ephesus, the tour guide was like, hey, we want to take you to a carpet co-op. And there was like a document left on our bus seats that kind of like outlined all the different shopping that you can do. And so this was part of that kind of shopping experience. And the carpet co-op, he explained, was kind of like this feature in Turkey that's subsidized by the Turkish government to get weavers, who are primarily women, back to hand weaving, which is kind of an ancient art practice, hand weaving Turkish carpets, which has been slowly declining in modern day Turkey. And so the Turkish government has supported these kind of carpet co-ops. And we were able to go to one which was at this kind of like small shopping mini mall kind of area that's right by the port of Kusadasi. So you're not far from the ship, you're like a 5-minute walk from the ship. The owner greeted us. He welcomed us into his store, and he showed us how the silk is boiled, and He went on to showcase with one of his award-winning carpet weavers how the process is executed, how they weave these carpets by hand, how they use the silk to weave, and how they ultimately create these incredible carpets. And then after the kind of tutorial, we went upstairs, and of course they had wine and bagels for us. And in the showroom, they started showing off all of these carpets. Oh my God, they were absolutely captivating, beautiful. The silk woven in would catch the light and transform it into this other shimmering glossiness. It was so incredible. So there was a carpet that I absolutely fell in love with, and long story short, the price tag sent me into sticker shock. I obviously did not buy the carpet, but if you want to know the full story, check out my article where I go into deeper detail about it. It was quite shocking. But after that, we decided to go to the ship. We had seen what we wanted to see, which was the ruins of Ephesus. And so we spent the rest of the time on board, luxuriating. We watched the sunset. We enjoyed Winter Garden, the tea room. We watched the storm clouds roll in. It was all dramatic and alluring. And honestly, at this point in the cruise, it was so nice just to relax and not do a single thing. Sometimes you have to really give yourself those moments where you don't have those scheduled minute by minute scripts, where you just give yourself some time to breathe. We were just still like in shock from the carpet experience of just, I mean, it started out like a down payment for a house, and even with all the discounts, it whittled away to like a small wedding in Tampa, Florida, like the cost of a small wedding in Tampa, Florida. And I'm just like, I'm just obviously not one of those people. I'm more of a ruggable person. But those carpets were beautiful. But all in all, Kusadasi was nice, but I was actually ready to move on. And soon enough, we'd be on our way to the ruins of Troy in Çanakkale, Turkey, coming up.